All right, hello everyone and welcome to the final session of the ConnectWise Manage Certified Expert course. I'll be starting us off today with some process automation. And like always, we'll take a quick look at our agenda before we dive in. So when we talk about automation within Manage, there's a couple different pieces of functionality we really like to highlight. The first piece I'm going to be going over today is ticket templates. Now these ticket templates can be used a couple different ways, and I'll go over the two biggest ones. The first is they're used to create recurring tickets, the ability to schedule something on the same date and time on a set recurring schedule, maybe weekly or monthly or quarterly. Anything you need to make sure that gets done the same way every time, recurring ticket template is the way to go. The other side is auto templates, and this allows us to predefine information onto tickets that have already been created on your service boards. From there, we'll go over the piece of automation that I think everyone here is probably familiar with, workflow rules. But one of the things that's so great about workflow rules is they can do so much for us. So today we'll kind of highlight how they're constructed, and then I want to get a little dialogue going with you, our audience, to see how you are using workflow rules currently. After that, we'll move on into tracks, which is something we touched on briefly all the way back on our first week when we were going over marketing. And tracks are a way to carry out a set of actions on a defined timeline. We'll go into how they're set up and how they're used later on. And then we're going to finish it off with some ConnectWise Manage Labs. These are little pieces of functionality that you can enable on a global basis. And from my experience, that makes everyone's lives all just a little bit easier once they're enabled. I'll go over a couple of my favorites, how they're used, and why they'll be useful to you. So with our intro out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple exam questions. Prep from our last week that we covered, or from on Monday that we went over on invoicing. What can be used to create custom invoice templates? Let me see what you guys think in our answer pod. All right, seeing some answers come through. It's most of the room, but not everyone. I'll give you guys a little bit longer. I'm glad I asked this one, because the answer is actually A. So we can set up the standard invoice templates in the invoice template setup table. This is that screen that has all of the, I'm actually going to pull it up just so we can kind of all be on the same page, since a lot of people did get this one wrong. I want to make sure that we do cover it. So if I hop into the setup tables here and open up my invoice templates, this is where we can actually create the custom invoice or the standard invoice templates. You can see I've flagged a couple as custom, but as far as creating the standard ones, it's this screen here with all the checkboxes and fields where we can go ahead and really get nitty gritty on what we show or don't show on the invoice and how we display it. However, if we go back and I take a look at one of these custom ones, all that we have here is just a link to a report. That report is one we created in Report Writer. So to actually create and build out those custom invoice templates, that's going to be done in Report Writer. And then we can go ahead and link them in the invoice template setup table so we can use them on your invoice templates. But the actual creation of them is done outside of the setup table over in Report Writer. All right. For our next question, what screen should be accessed to create a credit memo for a customer? Again, let me see what you think in our answer pod. That's almost everyone. You have a couple holdouts still. That's all right if you're thinking it over. Okay, most of us did get this one correct. It is going to be D, special invoices. The invoicing screen is where we create the standard and agreement invoices. Invoice batch emailing is where we send them out. Account Accounting interface is where we send the invoices from Manage over to your accounting package, and then the special invoices are where we create those unique invoices such as credit memos, down payments, and miscellaneous invoices. Okay, now with the review out of our way, let's go ahead and dive into some of our automation content. And for that, we're first going to check in with Chris, our service manager. He creates tickets for all of the recurring meetings his team has with clients. Most of them happen once per quarter. Occasionally, he forgets which meetings should occur when. Manually going in and scheduling is only going to get you so far. You can only manually schedule something so far in advance, and whenever you stop scheduling, if you don't remember to go back in and schedule that next quarterly meeting, there's a very good chance you're not going to remember to come back and do that again in the future. So having something automatically generated, blocking off your calendar and the resource for the correct company and contact is going to go a long way to make sure that these meetings happen and they happen consistently the same way every time. So how can we simplify this process and ensure that his calendar is blocked off for all those recurring meetings? I talked about it during the agenda. This is going to be using those ticket templates. These ticket templates are set up within the ticket template setup table within Manage. We're taking a look at one right here. And this is where we start defining some general information about the ticket template itself. This is probably, even if you've never seen this screen before, some parts of this are looking pretty familiar to you because they look very similar to what you might see on the actual ticket screen, especially being the send notes as email, the budget analysis, the ticket information such as the board, the status, types of type and item. We can enter in the summary. I can add any notes I want alongside that. All the information we enter here will predefine on any tickets created using this template. But there is one new pod on here that is not present on the ticket screen, and it's very important when it comes to setting up these recurring ticket templates. And that's going to be this auto generation pod right here. From here, there's 3 important decisions you need to make when you are setting up a recurring ticket template. The first one up top is how far in advance do we want to generate the schedule entry? Really, this is asking how far in advance do we want to block off someone's calendar? And if I know I'm going to be doing this every quarter at the same time, I want to make sure that I schedule it farther enough in advance. So if someone's thinking about asking time off, or if I'm trying to schedule something else, maybe some project work that's going to be coming down the line, I need to make sure they're free on this day to go to that meeting. So I want this pushed out pretty far. Maybe 15 days works for me. Maybe I want to make it a little further, like 60 or even 90, if I want to guarantee that this resource is allocated to work on this recurring task. The bottom one right here, the generate service ticket, is going to work the exact same way, except it's not just creating a schedule entry, it's creating the ticket itself. And some of you might be wondering what the difference between the two are. Well, that's going to come down to whether you're simply blocking off the calendar or whether you have a ticket on your service board representing for this. And the reason you might want those to be different is you'll want to block off a calendar far in advance because you don't want someone accidentally double booked, but you don't necessarily need a ticket that far in advance. If you had 30 tickets for the next 30 meetings that aren't going to happen for 90 days, that's really just going to be clutter on your service board. You don't want that. So you might have the actual ticket being generated much closer to the actual day of the meeting. In this case, only a week before. Give me some time to go in and start prepping and tracking my time as I prep for the meeting. So that way I can block off time further in advance without cluttering up my board for 90 days worth of meetings. Then the middle option right here is what allows us to decide, are we going to create a new ticket for every single one of these meetings, or am I just going to continually schedule the resource on the same ticket every time? And depending why you're having this meeting, one method may work for you more than the other. It really depends on whether you want to be able to close it out and mark that you're completed, or if this is just an ongoing thing that happens frequently. For example, internally, we have some weekly meetings we do for our own education team. We use a ticket template for that to schedule our time, and we don't really need a new ticket every time. That's just more upkeep. We just need one central location to track the meeting and the notes, so we just use the same ticket time and time again. But this is just the first step in setting up a ticket template. One of the great parts of using a ticket template is how granular you can be defining how they're created. I talked about those general settings on that main template tab, but as you can see here, you can also define a task list as part of that template. This is great for any of those recurring meetings you have that are maybe on site with a customer and a process needs to take place. Maybe there's a set of tasks that need to be completed. Maybe it's not just a meeting with a customer, but proactive work being done for a customer that It just needs to be done a specific way every single time. If you have a new resource coming on, they've never done this before, they might be a little lost. They won't be if you have documented every step in that process in the ticket notes. So when this new resource gets assigned this ticket, they have every single thing they need to do listed on the actual ticket itself. Every step in the process, they can go ahead and check off that task list as they complete it to make sure everything gets covered. The other big item on here is going to be the Resources tab. And this actually does two different things for us. The obvious one, as you can see here, and as it's named, it's going to schedule the resources on these recurring tickets. When these tickets generate and the schedules generate on that recurring schedule, who do they get generated for? It's for every member we have listed out here. But it does more than just define who's being scheduled. It also defines what that schedule is. On this Resources tab, we can define how often it actually recurs. You'll remember on the Template tab, we talked about how far in advance, but that doesn't tell us what that recurring cycle is. Here, when we're scheduling the resources, we define how often we want that showing up. And you can get very specific. It can be every Monday morning at 9. It can be quarterly on the first Monday of the quarter. It can be monthly on the last Friday of the quarter or on the month. There's a lot of flexibility here, so these are showing up on exactly the time and days that matter to you. So this is all going to be done here on the Resources tab itself. This is where we define the recurring schedule. Well, that's all great and good when we create the templates, but setting them up in these setup tables doesn't do anything for us yet. Right now we've just created a template that we can use. We have not yet used it yet, or we have not yet started using it. To actually use these templates, they need to be applied to your customers. For that internal meeting I talked about earlier, that's a template that's applied to my internal company in ConnectWise Manage. In this case, we're looking at a template or a couple templates we've applied for one of my customers, Chris Craft Boats. Here I have some server preventative maintenance that's going to be done on a monthly schedule, and then a weekly sales meeting I might have with them just to talk over any problems they might be having. This might be something my account managers do to kind of build that relationship with them and make sure that it is happening consistently. To apply these templates, you'll go to their company record in Manage and to the Ticket Templates tab and create a new template right here. And when you do that, you're going to have two different options. You can either create a copy or create a link. Now a copy is going to copy over everything that you had in the setup tables. So every single setting you had on there, the template, general ticket settings, the task list, the resources, the schedule, the generation options, all that comes over and gets added here on the Ticket Templates tab. And if you need to make any changes, you can update your template directly here on the company, and that will not affect anything else. You'll only update the ticket template for this one customer. But if you need to link them together, you can use the link option, and what this is going to do is it's still going to copy everything over, but you cannot edit the template itself. The template will be created the exact same way it is in your setup tables, and it cannot be changed. The only way to change it is to change the setup tables, but doing that will change the template for every single customer you have using this template. Now there are two different reasons why you might want to use one or the other. The copy is great when you have a process that's slightly different for different customers. Maybe 80% of the process is the same, but that last 20% can really differ pretty greatly from customer to customer. In that case, you want to create copies for each and every different customer to account for the little differences and nuances each customer has. The flip side is the link. In this case, if the process is standardized and identical across all of your customers, you'll definitely want to use the link option. And that's because you now have a much more scalable process. If this standardized process changes, instead of changing the 30 different company templates that are using this, you only change the one template in the setup tables, and that one change is pushed through to all of your other customers. It makes it much more scalable, much more standardized, and streamlined going forward. But, and as you can probably tell, if your customers do have different processes, the link option is not going to work for you. So you have two different options here depending what your end goal is. All right, now we're going to check back in with Chris, our service manager. Every time a ticket comes in for a new installation, the team follows the same steps. It is important that they document and confirm that each of these steps is completed. How can Chris ensure the correct process is being followed and recorded? For this, we're going to use ticket templates, but in a slightly different way. As you can tell here, he's responding to tickets as they come in from customers. There's no reliable schedule, there's no predictable cycle or flow. It's whenever the ticket comes in, we need to handle it, but there's a standardized process for doing so. So since we can't create these tickets proactively in advance, but we still want to standardize them, we're going to use auto templates instead. Auto templates are going to be created in the service board setup table. There is an auto templates tab. And when you're setting up the auto template, there's two different halves we need to worry about. When do we apply the template and what template goes along with that? And what information are we using from that template? So in this top section right here, we're leveraging the type, subtype, and item fields on tickets, which are what we use to classify what a ticket is. Type describes a ticket in a general sense. The subtype is based on the type, you have a set of subtypes. And then finally, an item based on that. All three are going to be related together, and they all narrow in and focus in on exactly what the issue is. Here, we're talking about a ticket that comes in for an application I'm doing. What type of application? Oh, well, it's an email application. What am I doing for this email application? Oh, it's password related. Well, once I know all of that information, I now have a pretty good idea exactly what I need to do to resolve the issue. In fact, I have a standardized process for password resets. That process I've actually built out in a ticket template, and now I've linked it to the type, subtype, and item listed here. Now, every single time on every single ticket that I mark type application, subtype email, item password, I'm going to apply all of this information here from my template itself. In this case, I'm updating the discussion. I'm adding some internal notes. I'm adding a task list right onto the ticket itself based on how I want my team to reset that password. I'm also budgeting time. I know how long a password reset takes. It's pretty quick and easy, so I'm going to log that budget time of half an hour. Well, now I can actually track and report on whenever my tickets are going over that budget, so I can see when things are taking more or less time than I'm expecting them to. And if this needed to be billed a specific way, I can define the finance information on as well. I can make sure that tickets of this type are billed the same way consistently and automatically. All I had to do was classify that ticket using type, subtype, and item, which realistically I should be doing anyway. Because even if I'm not using auto templates, getting that granular level of detail in reporting is really powerful for me as a service manager. It allows me to take a deep look into the tickets that come into my service board and see what type of tickets are my customers struggling with most, what type of tickets are being created more than the others. Also, what type of tickets are my team struggling with? Which tickets are actually eating up more time? Maybe less tickets come in, but I can see disproportionately they're eating up more time. And all this comes simply from classifying tickets with that type, subtype, and item. Then, if we're already doing that, I'm setting up these templates, and now they're applying automatically to help inform my team on what the process is to handle that specific issue. And what's great about this is going to enable them going forward for any new resources that come on. If I have a new resource start, he doesn't know my processes, he doesn't have to go searching for the answers, because as soon as he gets assigned a ticket, oh, the task list is right there in front of him. He has the answers, the step-by-step guide, it's right there. Not only did he need to bother a senior resource, he didn't even need to go look himself. He had the answers, the steps right there. All he had to do was follow the instructions I built out for him with my auto templates and ticket templates. All right, time for a pop quiz. For a company's ticket template to reflect changes made in the setup tables, what must be selected upon application? So what are we selecting when we're applying it to a company itself? Let me see what you think in my answer pod. You guys are slower on this one. That's all right. Take your time, think it over. All right, that seems to be about everyone. And most people got it correct. It is going to be link. And link is what allows us to maintain that relationship between the two. If they're linked, any updates in the setup tables affects all of my applied templates. If they're copied, any updates in one only happen in the updated record. They're not pushed through to anything else. And like I said, we're going to be using the link in this instance right down here. All right, with that in mind, I want to give you guys a chance to go ahead and create your own auto templates. So go ahead, hop into that training database and walk through these steps right here. And I'm going to take a quick break while you guys do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back everyone. For any of you out there still finishing up this activity, go on ahead. We actually had some questions come in I was going to go ahead and tackle now while we had some time. The first question is, do you have a screenshot of what it would look like, the ticket versus schedule entry? I don't, but our documentation does. So let me go ahead and grab that. Here we go. So here's a screenshot of someone's calendar. Hopefully you guys are all familiar with what tickets look like now. It's going to be that blue guy at the top there. And down below, those purple records are schedule entries that have been generated prior to the ticket. Now, once the ticket has also been generated, you'll see them turn blue. Also, as a fun fact, if you were to open up any of those schedule entries, it would generate the ticket for you right there on the spot, and then it would look blue for you anytime going forward. All right, next question. When using ticket templates, does the ticket remain open or does it auto-open/close? When using ticket templates, they're going to remain in whatever status you created them in. That status you can specify on the template itself. Obviously, hopefully, once the resources start working on the ticket, they're updating the status. If you wanted to, though, you could set up a workflow rule to automatically update that status for you. We have some triggers based around schedule entry, so you can wait till the schedule entry is in the past, and once that's happened, you could automatically update the status to whatever you wanted it to. We'll take a look at a further, deeper look into workflow rules here in a little bit. The next question. For auto template finance info, would this edit the finance tab on the ticket itself to override the agreement finance? This case, the finance information is going to override the actual finance tab on the ticket itself. So that may or may not affect whether or not the agreement covers something. What it will do is override things such as whether the ticket's billing at your normal hourly rate or whether it's billing at a fixed fee amount or whether something is billable by default or not. If you want more information on that, just take a look in your actual test instance and open up the ticket template setup table and check out the finance tab there to see everything that can be overridden. Next question. Can you also set this up in project tickets? Yes, you can. There is an auto templates tab on the project board, and just like on the service side, you can apply a type, subtype, and item for your project, and it will go ahead and apply a specific template onto that project ticket for you based on that. I've been told by support on more than one occasion not to set ticket creation on a template to lower than 3 days. Is this ever going to be fixed so we can create 1 day before or even same day? From my experience, as long as you are doing it at least 1 day before, you should be fine. The only issues I've seen are creating it on same day. That way, that's just because if anything goes wrong and if there's a hiccup on the server or a disruption on when you're actually trying to create the ticket, or maybe your server is being patched at that time or being updated, that would prevent the ticket from being generated. Well, it missed its window and it doesn't have any more chances. That's why we recommend having at least 1 day in there to go ahead and give it a second retry if it misses its initial generation window. I'd be curious what the benefit of having it generate same day would be and why the 1 day delay would cause an issue. But if there is one, I'm open to hearing it. All right. And that's all the questions for now. Please keep them coming. I enjoy answering them. Let me just clear these out so we're ready for more. And let's get back underway. One thing I hear consistently every single time I bring up auto templates is that, wow, those sure would be great if my team would actually select the type, subtype, and item on tickets, but they never do. Well, there's one way to kind of help them along, and when I say help, I mean force, and that is by making these required fields. If you go to the custom field setup table, not only can you add new custom fields to ConnectWise Manage, you can actually tweak some of the pre-existing fields. In this case, if we click into type, subtype, or item, I'll get this little flyout down here, and you can actually check this box to make these fields required. Now the one thing to keep in mind here is that this is a global setting. That means it will require type, subtype, and or item on every single ticket in your system if you do flag those are required. But this is a very useful way to kind of forcing your team to make sure that these get reported and entered every single time on your tickets. All right, time for a pop quiz. Where can you set up auto templates? Are auto templates set up in the ticket template setup table, the auto template setup table, the service board setup table, or the workflow rule setup table? Let me hear what you guys think in the answer pod. Oh, you guys didn't tell me you're still looking at the wrong screen. Let me get that out of the way. There, that's better. Less and less people are answering, which is disappointing because there's actually more people attending than when we first started. So if you're not sure, please guess. I won't shame you, I promise. Some people may still be thinking, so I'll let them think it over. All right, I think that is everyone. The answer is going to be C, the service board setup table. There's an auto templates tab on that service board setup table, and from there you can select your ticket template along with the type, subtype, and item that it corresponds to. All right, checking back in with Chris again. Some tickets on Chris's service board require information from the client for work to continue. His team ends up spending a significant amount of time following up on these tickets, or worse, they forget to follow up at all, which is problematic. We don't want to just leave tickets out there unanswered, unresolved. We need to make sure that we are consistently following up and ensuring that they're getting closed out. The flip side, though, is that can eat up a lot of time, and it feels very unproductive to go through a list of tickets you're assigned to, reach back out for the second or third time to have the contact continue to not respond. So we need a way to stay in touch with the contact, but without eating into my team's time. How can we do this? Well, we're going to use our workflow rules to handle this exact scenario. Now, I use this business case because I find this is a good jumping off point when it comes to workflow rules, because this is a use case that most of our partner base are using already for our workflow rules. Following up on tickets in awaiting status is always one of the first workflow rules everyone turns on because it's something no one wants to do, but they understand it's important. But there's a lot more workflow rules can do for us than just this automatic follow-up process. In fact, there's a lot more we can do with workflow rules than just monitor service tickets. You can monitor agreements, configurations, invoices, opportunities, service tickets, projects, sales orders. The list goes on. There are a ton of different records we can monitor. I think one of the few things we can't is activities. Everything else, though, we're going to be able to track with workflow rules and then take an action whenever our specified event occurs. And those are the two things workflow rules are made of. The event defines what you're looking for. What are you waiting to happen? Or waiting for it to happen. In this case, we are waiting for tickets in one of a couple different statuses. Here I'm looking for a ticket that is a new email or new portal, the different new statuses I have on my service board, and it was created outside of business hours. So I'm looking for new tickets created after my business closes down for the day. Now, why am I doing that? Well, that why comes in when we start looking at the action. What do we want to happen when that event is found? In this case, we are actually going to go ahead and change the ticket status. So every time a new ticket gets created on my service board outside of my normal business hours, I'm going to change the status. What's great about changing statuses? Statuses have status notifications with them. So if I had an on-call resource that needs to be notified when this ticket came in, I could notify him automatically when this ticket was generated on the board so they could take a look. This was a way for me to kind of build in some automated processes, because that on-call person doesn't want to stare at a blank service board until a ticket comes in. He wants to be notified when he has to take action. And this workflow rule is going to do that for me. By combining what am I waiting for, a ticket being created at some office hours, and updating that status. And that status is great because now not only am I alerting someone, but I'm also tracking where it is in the process. By changing it from that new status, I'm tracking that this workflow rule has done its job, and by that status changing, it no longer meets the criteria for my event. So this workflow rule can keep running and find any other new tickets that come in. The first ticket that's already had its status changed no longer qualifies, so it can move on with the next part in the process. When you are setting these up, make sure you don't forget to actually activate your workflow rules. Activating your workflow rules is what's going to enable them. All this setup we do beforehand, creating the events, setting the actions, setting the recurring parameters. That can be pretty involved. You may want to do some testing with that. So you don't want to activate them right away, but once you are complete, make sure you do go back in and activate them so they can go ahead and start processing. Before I move on, I'd like to hear from you guys what type of workflow rules you have currently. Let me hear what you guys use right now in that Q&A pod. None? You have no workflow rules. I find that very hard to believe. I in fact think you might just be a little too lazy to answer. Like I said before, I'm not going to shame you for bad answers. I'm going to shame you for not answering. Oh wow, look at all these workflow rules. Past due invoices, past due ticket reminders, checking to see if a ticket has been completed yet. My colleagues don't trust me to make workflow rules. That's probably for a good reason. We use workflow rules to monitor the time spent on tickets to make sure that we're not spending too much time. If we're spending more than 2, 4, 6 hours, someone needs to be notified. This is a good indicator that a project might need to be created. Looking for things that go over budget hours. This applies both to service tickets and to projects. Someone else is doing project budget hours. Ooh, I like this one. Ticket that has been unassigned for too long. So you probably have someone checking your service boards, but things can still slip through the cracks. So having a workflow rule there as a backup to catch things that have yet to be assigned for too long is a good backup. Someone else has a auto-resolve process in place. Once technicians have marked a ticket as resolved, there's a 24-hour waiting period where the customer can go ahead and confirm whether or not it is resolved. If they reply back, the status is changed, but if no reply is heard, it looks like it gets closed out automatically. Alerting when agreements are expiring, alerting when high priority issues are identified. So a lot of good stuff, and this really highlights all the different flexibility and power workflow rules have. One of the reasons I wanted to get you guys talking is rather than just hear me list off things I think should be workflow rules, some of the best value is hearing what other partners are actually using. So I wanted to get some feedback on really what you guys find useful for your workflow rules. A couple others I'm seeing come in are tracking for SLAs and when those either have breached or are threatening to breach. That's one I like a lot. Alerting when projects are closed so the finance team can go ahead and start the billing process for them, because the person working the project probably isn't the person creating the invoice. So we need to make sure there's a good smooth handoff, and workflow rules will handle that for us. And sending an email whenever a ticket needs escalated support. So if the tier 1 can't handle it, we need to again hand it off to the next team. Workflow rules are great for that. One theme I saw consistently in these responses were for different process handoffs. Whenever things go from one team to another, workflow rules are a great way to make sure that handoff is handled consistently every time the same way. So thank you guys all for chiming in. Those ideas, that discussion got you guys thinking of, hey, maybe there's some other workflow rules I could build, we have a great brand new resource for you on the university, our workflow rules matrix. This is going to give you an in-depth breakdown of everything that can be monitored with workflow rules, the triggers you have available, which you can click into to get more information. So if the trigger itself isn't enough to tell you what it does, if you click into it, we'll break down in detail exactly how that trigger is used. And then we have all the actions available for that specific record as well. So everything you need to know about setting up workflow rules in one place on one screen and condensed down so it's not the laundry list of workflow triggers that we used to have in the documentation. Well, that's still there, but now it's much more digestible here in the workflow rules matrix. If you're looking for more suggestions on potentially useful workflow rules for your organization, I cannot recommend this webinar enough, starring Charles Lawrence and our own Renee Bergstresser, who will walk you through some of the top workflow rules used by our partners that you can import from the marketplace. All right, time for another pop quiz. All of the following can be monitored with workflow rules except for what? 4 different options here. Let me know which one of these can't be tracked with workflow rules. All right, most people did get this one correct. It is going to be activities. That's the one record on here that we don't have workflow rules for. All the rest, though, we can go ahead and automate many different actions using our workflow rules. Now we're going to check in with Shavani, our account manager, and she completes the same admin work every time a new customer signs on. Even with all the repetition, she sometimes misses an important step, which can cause problems later on. She wants to know how she can automate some of these steps and create reminders for all of the rest. For this, we are going to use tracks. Tracks are going to be a series of automated steps that are performed on a defined timeline. I use onboarding in this example because that's one of those things that there's a lot of little things that need to be done and they can't all be done right at the same time. There needs to be a bit of a delay between when each piece is delivered, otherwise you're bombarding and overloading this brand new customer with just too much information. So we can use a track to go ahead and slowly give out the little pieces of information, send an email there, create an activity for their account manager a week later to give them a call, send a follow-up email the week after, send them another email a little while later to check in with how things are going, schedule another call the week after that. Being able to build out that series of steps however you want on the schedule you want is key to making sure that process is delivered consistently. Now when it comes to applying these tracks, you have a lot of different options. They can be applied manually through things like the Tracks tab on the company in Contact or Opportunity. But some of the more fun methods are through other pieces of functionality we already talked about a little bit. You can apply them through a workflow rule, which is handy because workflow rules are very reactive. They can identify when something occurs, but typically they don't have any delay built in. Their action happens as soon as they find the event. However, if you use the action to apply a track, you can now use that track in its timeline to have a built-in delay to when your response to that event is. This can be useful if you want to wait a day or two before you respond to something. Here, a good use of this is if you want to send out a survey. Well, you can use a workflow rule to track when something occurs, then perform the action several days later to send the survey after people have had a chance to move on with something else when it may not be fresh on their mind. Check back in again a couple days later since they may have already ignored the first time you asked for that survey. We can also apply them through company status, through workflow rules, and even via tracks. So you can actually chain tracks together if you need to, if you have multiple different processes that start and stop along the way. Taking a look at a track, this is my onboarding process. I have a series of emails being sent out, as well with several different activities, and finally to cap it all off, I'm actually changing the company status. So here I'm going to go ahead and send them a series of emails as they're onboarded over what normally takes 30 days. I can go ahead and space out those different emails proportionally throughout. can go ahead and schedule the activities whenever I need to, in this case 30 days after the process starts. And then finally, once the track completes, they will have been successfully onboarded. I'm going to update the company status. This is just another manual step that normally someone on my team would have to go in and do. We need to track that they are active in the system because that's going to tie into a whole lot of other things in Manage. But having a track do it is again going to save time and make sure it happens every time. The track's not going to forget to do something. It's going to happen on the day you specify. Like it says here, we can delay actions. One thing to keep in mind with tracks, they are typically used on the marketing and onboarding side of things, folks with sales and kind of reaching out and communicating to customers. So with that in mind, we are only going to be performing track actions on your business days. So you don't have to worry about when you're building out this timeline, whether or not something falls on a Saturday or Sunday and someone's not going to be there. We're only going to perform these actions on working days according to your office calendar. So if you only work Monday through Friday, you're only going to be communicating out to the customer, scheduling activities on those specified working days. Now, when you are setting up the actions for these tracks, they look very familiar to many of the other actions we talked about, such as setting them up for my workflow rules. Here, I'm creating an activity. I can use these tokens up here to parse specific information into the subject and body of the activity, so I can actually give some extra information to the resource that this activity is assigned to. But the big differentiator here is one simple new field down here at the bottom that says perform after X days. This X days is what allows us to build out what that timeline is. So it can be 1 day, and then 5 days, and then 7 days, and then 10 days. The thing to keep in mind that the after X days is always going to be after the track is applied. Each one of these actions is measuring from that initial applied date, so we're going to be increasing the number of days as our actions continue on into our timeline. Pro tip for you guys, since tracks are often used for marketing, what we don't want is having a, say, 90-day marketing plan in place with a track that's reaching out to your customer over those 90 days, and then have them sign on as a customer 30 days in. If that happens, well, now you have 60 more days of marketing targeted at them that's talking to them as if they're not already a customer. And that's an embarrassing look, and we don't want that. So we have the ability to actually cancel tracks automatically when specific company status changes happen. For example, if I were to change them to an active status, I can go ahead and cancel all my ongoing tracks because the relationship with me has actually changed very significantly. We're tracking that relationship change with that company status. Them as a prospect and them as a customer are two very different conversations I want to have. Now, just because they're an active customer doesn't mean I'm not going to market to them anymore. It just means I'm going to be marketing to them differently. I need to have a different message, a different language, a different level of engagement, or else my marketing is not only going to fall flat, it's actually going to come across a little unprofessional. So we need to make sure that our marketing is focused based on their type of a relationship, and the ability to cancel these tracks automatically makes that easy. All right, time for another pop quiz for you guys. Tickets that are about to breach SLAs and unpaid invoices can be monitored with this piece of automation: tracks, ticket templates, ConnectWise Labs, or workflow rules. Let me see what you guys think. See a lot of quick answers. That makes me happy. The answer is going to be D, workflow rules. And that comes back to this table of reference, all the different types of records that we can monitor. And whenever you hear about monitoring something within Manage, we're always going to be doing that through our workflow rules. Let's check in with Cameron, our senior technician, and he spends much of his day multitasking. He opens tickets, works on them, while also working on large internal projects. And his timesheet is always a mess. How can Cameron enter time quickly on multiple tasks while multitasking? For this, we're going to use a feature we call the Stopwatch. The Stopwatch has been available in the mobile app for a long time, but a year or so ago, we added it into the actual desktop and web version of Manage itself, and you'll find that right along here in the ticket toolbar. You'll see it every time you open a new ticket. All you have to do is press play, and that timer will begin. Once you hit play, you'll see the Stopwatch notes pop out, so you can actually enter your notes on the fly without opening up a brand new time entry. You can track what you're doing while you're doing it, And then you can pause and stop the timer as needed. And once you've finished, if you hit stop, we'll create a new time entry for you using the notes you've already logged for the duration that this stopwatch was running for you. This makes it much easier to actually track what you're doing and when, especially when you're doing more than one thing. If you're just doing the one thing, manage to track what time you opened up that screen, but if you're hopping around to a lot of different records, you're gonna lose all sense of what you started and when, which is why these timers are great. You can pause them as you stop and move to something else, and start it up again as soon as you come back. And if you want to work on even more things, we make it even easier from the All Tickets tab. If you head over to the My List screen and open up the All Tickets tab, you will see a stopwatch column. This will show you every ticket you're working on and the timers associated with each. You can have them going simultaneously, you can start and stop them. You can pop open the notes for each one, so enter a little bit here and there as you work, close it down and save it, and keep coming and going as you need, picking up right where you left off. Makes it very easy to track any number of tasks you may be working on, so it all can get logged as time. The one complaint I hear from service managers all the time is, my techs won't enter the time. And I always ask why. I said, oh, they're too busy to enter their time, they don't have time to go back and do it. Well, great, they don't have to go back. They can enter their time and their notes in real time simply by starting and stopping these timers. But I know what you're saying, they won't even have time to hit that play button. Well then, I guess we're just out of luck. No, we're not out of luck. We can automatically start that stopwatch for them every time they open up the ticket. So now they don't even have to press play. All they have to do is stop that timer when they finish, and we'll pop up the notes for it as well. So every time they start that stopwatch, the notes thing is right there, so all they have to do is type in. They don't have to go anywhere, they don't have to click anything. Just write down what they're doing as they're doing it to make documenting their time as easy as possible. All right, which feature enables us to perform multiple actions over a defined timeline? For example, sending an email in one day, creating an activity 5 days later. Let me see what you guys think in our answer pod. You guys are doing much better on this Q&A. Nice and quick. This one is going to be D, tracks. And to finish up for today, I wanted to talk about a couple managed labs. These are just really quick, simple, easy pieces of functionality that I think do wonders to making your team work more efficiently. The first one is going to be the time entry default start time. This creates a hyperlink on the actual time entry screen itself that when clicked, you'll go ahead and set the start time of your new time entry to when you finished your last time entry. In short, what this means is it makes it very easy to chain all of your time entries together without creating little gaps in between. So if you are working on one thing and going right to the next and to the next, if you wait a couple minutes before you open the ticket, it'll create a little gap in your time entry, which you then have to go back and fill in at the end of the day, which is an annoying process. But if all these time entries are chained together, you don't have to do that. And this lab makes that easy. The other one is save and return. This adds a new button on the time entry screen that is right next to that save and close button, which normally would save the time entry, close it, and take you back to the ticket screen. But when do you enter your time? When you're done working on something. If you're done working in the ticket, why do you want to go back to the ticket screen? Wouldn't you much rather go back to the screen you were on before that? That's what this save and return button does. Hitting save and return will save your time entry, close it, save your ticket, close it, and then take you back to wherever you were before. Did you come from the service board? Great, you're back on the service board now, ready to move on to the next task. Did you come from your My Calendar screen? That's where we'll send you. Did you search for this ticket in the ticket search screen? We'll take you back there. It takes you right back to where you started, kind of cutting out that middle step of, okay, I saved the time entry, now let me save the ticket. Just allows you to work less clicks and work faster. And this last one is creating service ticket links. This allows you to hyperlink to a ticket within the actual notes of a ticket itself. This is useful whenever you need to reference another ticket within Manage on an existing ticket. All you have to do is type # and then the ticket number you're referencing, and now anyone in your organization can click that link in the Manage ticket notes, and that'll pop open the other ticket in a brand new window. It makes it really easy to reference things, so no one has to, copy, paste, search, open. Just click that link and you're right there. Just little things that make it a lot easier to navigate around and accomplish what your team is trying to do. Here is an example of that time entry default start time. When this lab is enabled, you'll see a little hyperlink on the start time. If you click that, it'll go ahead and set the time entry right here to whenever you finished up your last time entry. Again, cutting down on those gaps in between time entries, so there's a nice, smooth, clean flow. All of these labs can be enabled in the Manage Labs setup table. You'll find these and others in there. Go ahead, check them out. These are the 3 that I think are useful to every partner, which is why I wanted to highlight them today. All right, one last pop quiz before we wrap up. Which of the following can be used to cancel open tracks on a company? Let's see what you think. All right, you guys are correct. It is going to be C, company status, as you can see right here. All right, it is time for questions, and we've had quite a few come in, so I'll go ahead and start answering those now. First question, can you make the impact / urgency on a ticket required? And this one cannot be marked as required because it is never blank. It always comes with a default impact and urgency. That's going to be determined by the SLA on the ticket. And that default impact and urgency, since it's already entered, marking something as required wouldn't really do anything since the field has already been populated. Next question. The scheduled entry is sufficient for booking time. The ticket is just clutter until it's actually needed, which isn't until the day of. So this goes back to what we were talking about with generating the ticket at least one day prior to the day of. If having tickets generated one day early is still creating too much clutter for you, you may want to consider creating them in a status that's not showing up on your service board, and then having a workflow rule change their status once the day of comes around. Something to consider. Can you tell us again where to find that workflow rules matrix? Rather than tell you, I'll just show you. So here I am on the university, and if I hop over here to education, I can go down here to matrices, and these are some of my favorite assets on the university because this is where we take some rather complex and really extremely detailed topics, such as setting up reporting, security roles, project roles, GLL counts. We break them down to a nice interactive tool to help you get as much information quickly and easily. We come down to Workflow Rules Matrix, pop up right here, and now I have a nice breakdown of the different records I can monitor, the triggers I have available, what they do, and then the actions I have available. So a really nice, easy, more digestible version of the documentation we have for triggers to help you find what you're looking for and what you have available when it comes to workflow rules. Can tracks create service tickets, or can they only create activities? Tracks can create both. And since we were talking about ticket templates today, that's actually what they use to create tickets. Both workflow rules and tracks can create tickets as their action. All you need is a ticket template, which they'll use to create the ticket. The ticket template tells them what type of ticket am I creating. For tracks, are they active on calendar days or business days? They're going to be active on business days, which are set by the calendar associated on your My Company screen. For the stopwatch, does that need to be enabled? I believe that is enabled within the Managed Labs. I'll go ahead and double check and then post on the forums exactly where that is, because I believe it's the Managed Lab setup table, but I may be correct, or may be incorrect. I could be correct too, I don't know. Can you use the stopwatch on a project ticket? I don't remember off the top of my head, so let's go ahead and take a look together. So I know the stopwatch is enabled in my system, so if I'm seeing it on project tickets, we can. If I can't, we can't. Actually, no, you should be able to, because it's available on the All Tickets screen, and at All Tickets also includes project tickets. But I'm gonna double check now, just in case. Yep, we have the stopwatch right here as well. So it is available for service tickets and project tickets. If you're only seeing it enabled on the service side and not the project side, I would go ahead and submit a ticket to our support team, because enabling it should be enabling it across the board. If it's not showing up at all for you, go ahead and check out that Managed Labs setup table, and that is where you enable the stopwatch for your system. Do we need to deactivate workflow rules before editing and changing them? So I want to say 1.5 to 2 years ago, we updated our workflow rules setup table to our new UI. And while we did that, we did a lot more than just make them look prettier. We added a whole slew of enhancements that I absolutely love as someone who used to work on our support team for Manage. Because as some of you may have heard, if you edited a workflow rule while it was running, that could break the workflow rule and mean you'd have to recreate it to get it working again. Good news, as soon as you edit a workflow rule in the newer UI, we deactivate it for you automatically so nothing breaks. You just need to remember to reactivate it again once you're done making your edits. On workflow rules, it'd be helpful to have the ability to set an effective date for a new rule. For example, if I have a rule monitoring for tickets in a complete status, I really only want this working on tickets going forward, not any historical complete tickets. While I understand the useful that and I would recommend adding that as an enhancement request, you aren't completely out of luck. If you set up the workflow rule with a dummy action and have it set to perform just once, as you are in this case, it will run on all of your existing complete tickets and just do whatever your dummy action is. Have it send an email to an email address that doesn't really care. Then you can go ahead and change the action to what you really want it to do, and now it'll only perform that action on any new tickets that meet that criteria, since it's already hit those old existing tickets. Bit of a trick for you. All right, I went a little bit over, but we are out of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then Renee will be back to dive into our review.
Hey, and welcome back to the last portion of our CMCE. As Mitch prefaced before, this is going to be a review session to make sure that everyone's ready for the exam. So we won't be covering any new content, but we really hope to touch on some pain points or some points of confusion throughout CMCE and make sure that everyone's super prepared for this test we'll be having next week. We did have a couple questions come in during the break related to our automation session, so I'm going to take a moment to go through those quickly and then we'll move into our review material. So are there managed labs that you can add to the system, or what's in the list, simply what's in the list? So what you'll find within the managed labs setup table, those are all of the managed labs that we currently have. However, that doesn't mean that as our new releases come out, items might be added. So definitely keep an eye out on those release notes and the release webinars to see if any new managed labs have been added. And I'll show you guys what this looks like as well. Okay, so we had a couple questions earlier about where these managed labs are. This is just going to be in my setup tables. I search for managed labs, and I have a full list of all the different labs that we've created. Now we do have documentation that covers in more detail what these labs are used for and what they do, but you'll notice that we have a stopwatch in here as well, just down here. You'd want to select on the side if it's not currently enabled, and then through the actions, you can go ahead and mark active. Now you're going to want to log it out of manage and then back in, but then you should be able to see the stopwatch in the My List, which was actually our other question, which was what does that look like? So here we're just in the sales module, the My List screen, and you'll notice that we have a stopwatch column right here where you can turn on and turn off these different stopwatch items. Now keep in mind that this column may not be located here, it might be at the very end, or there's actually a chance it could be hidden. So select this gears icon and make sure it's listed as a visible column and then save. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into some of our exam prep material. We're going to start off by covering the exam format just so that everyone knows how long they have to complete the exam, what's expected of them, what's considered pass-fail, etc. And then we're going to get into our expert material review, which will be covering a lot of the topics that we have looked at in the past 3 weeks. Before we get into that though, we do have 2 exam prep questions for you. First, what should be used to create recurring tickets? Is this referring to ticket templates, workflow rules, Outlook meetings, or tracks? Give you guys a moment or so to get your answers in. Okay, it looks like nearly everyone has responded. Somebody didn't make it back from break on time, but that's fine. Okay, and I'm glad to say that almost all of us are on the same page. We are referring to ticket templates. Ticket templates are intended for those recurring tickets. We can use them for weekly sales meetings, for on-site monthly maintenance, that sort of thing. I did notice that we did have an answer saying tracks. Now, tracks can be used to create multiple service tickets over a defined time period, but they're not necessarily intended to schedule something for 1:30 p.m. the first Monday of every month. So that's where we're going to want to use ticket templates. Second question, which managed feature should be used to monitor a specific event and then perform a desired action when that event is found? In this case, which piece of automation are we referring to? Does this represent tracks, workflow rules, auto templates, or ticket templates? Okay, and keep in mind as we go through this review session, this is really intended to be a high-level overview of what we've covered, just kind of a refresher before we get into our examination next week. If there are any topics that you've found particularly confusing or any examples you'd like to see, please go ahead and throw that into the Q&A pod and we can address them as we go. Okay, nearly everyone has answered. Oh, and everyone is on the same page. You are all correct. Wonderful job. We are referring to workflow rules, looking for a specific event and then performing an action. So for this exam format, you'll have 1 hour, a whole hour to complete the exam. It's going to consist of 40 multiple choice questions, and you're required to receive 75% or to get 75% of those questions correct in order to pass. Now, if you fail, there's no worries. You do have, in a week, you'll be able to retake it, and it will be free. So you get 1 free retake no matter what, so that you can try for that 75 or above. Now, after that point, if you fail both of the first 2 attempts, the first attempt and the second attempt, then you'll be invoiced $75 for each additional retake you do. So I would definitely recommend, if you don't quite pass it the first time, no worries, you still have another chance. Go back and review the material, maybe reach out to our team and ask for pointers on what to study for, and then take that second test. Now, the exam is actually going to be available within your university transcript, so definitely go ahead and log in, make sure that you can locate your transcript and the exam record. It's not going to be available, though, until August 19th, but you'll be able to access it and take it for an hour anytime between August 19th and August 26th. Now, you definitely want to take the test before August 26th, or it will no longer be on your transcript, and you'll have to reach out to our team to take the test. So definitely keep that in mind. And just one thing that I also wanted to share before we get into the material, I want to talk a little bit about resources that we can use while taking this test. Now, 75%, I definitely think that everyone who's been logging in has been really active in our chats, really active in answering our questions. So it seems like the room is pretty well prepared for this exam. So I wouldn't stress out about it too much, but definitely any areas where you're super confused, be sure to freshen up on them before you take it. Now, one pro tip that I would really like to share is that this is an open book exam. You can have the Manage instance open that you've been using, that you've been testing in. You can have the university open. Definitely take advantage of the links that we have within the application itself that take you directly to the documentation. If you find yourself wondering about a setting on ticket templates, and now they're saying auto templates, and you're trying to remember the differences between auto templates and ticket templates, oh, what does ignore and overwrite mean versus append? Well, if you actually navigate to the screen referenced in the question, from here, for one, it's a little bit easier to get an idea of what the question's asking if you're looking at the actual screen. But if you're still confused, this help button, the question mark with a circle around it, actually takes you directly to the Manage documentation that covers that screen. So in this document, you'll see that we give you a general overview, and then we define every field. So if it's a question of does it do this or this, it'll be really easy to find that here. And you can always just hit Control F and search for the keywords you're looking for. So definitely don't feel like you have to do this all from memory. You have a lot of resources at your fingertips to help you pass this exam. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to get into our review material. We're starting off with a business case with Andy, our technician. You may recognize this one. He's always having to change his filters on the service board to access the help desk because it doesn't default that way. It defaults showing a different board that he doesn't commonly work on. So in order for Andy to see the tickets he needs without additional clicks, where can he change these defaults? This is within the My Accounts screen. It's kind of a sneaky screen. It's like the My Company screen. A lot of settings exist there that you might expect to be other places. But when we're talking of default, we're talking about defaults for our entire company, usually referring to the My Company screen. We're talking about defaults for an entire member. A lot of these are hidden within the My Account screen. As a refresher, within the top right, you will see your avatar. You can select the drop-down and then choose My Account screen within. If you're not seeing the avatar, be sure to select this expand indicator right here. Or it lists as collapsed right now, but it'll list as expand, and you can expand to see your avatar and access the My Account screen. Now the defaults are going to be on that second tab, nicely named defaults, and here you can see the field that he was looking for. He just wanted to make sure that when he went into the service board screen, the help desk board was automatically loaded. Well, now it will be because he set up his defaults properly. Okay. So now Shavani, our account manager, we're getting into more from our members into more company and contact focused questions. So she's responsible for maintaining all of these relationships with the customers and really needs a quick and easy way to determine their financial standing, where they are in the sales process, etc. Well, that's why we have these wonderful fields like company status and company type. In this case, if we're talking about financial standing, something an account manager would be really concerned with, the company status is the field that's going to indicate this for us. Now, we discussed this a decent bit earlier on in our presentation because when we were reviewing companies and contacts, the type and status fields were pretty confusing. And I get that because they are very similar. Sometimes you'll see active in both, and that can be even more confusing. Well, really, type is who they are to us. Where do they stand in the sales process? And status is more of their financial standing. So that's how I like to keep them apart. But do keep in mind that you can always open the documentation and get the full definition for each of these fields if that question comes up in the test. There's no reason to miss it because you have the information available. As a kind of walkthrough through company status, remember it's their financial standing. So it's what's going on with them. We start off with someone who's not been approved. They're likely a lead in our system still. We're going to move them into an approved status maybe when we're working on a sale for them. And then when they are fully onboarded, we're going to put them in an active or client status. That's what you see right here in the middle. Now, while someone is an active client, there's a chance that they could fall behind on some of their bills, and we might need to put them in a delinquent status. Now, if this gets a bit out of hand and we've decided that we can no longer provide service to them until they catch up on their bills, that's when we might move them into credit hold. Now, they're still an active client of ours, but we're kind of putting them on probation in a sense. So we have those other statuses to indicate that their financial standing while they're an active client has dipped. Now, this last one, project in progress, this naming can be a little bit confusing, but typically what this means is that we've decided to offboard them. Either they have been fired as a client of ours or they're leaving our company. So they're in the process of being offboarded. Possibly we're still providing support for them, but we are working to get the right information to pass them off. And then lastly, we have our former client, indicating that we no longer provide service for them and we're not working with them anymore. Now, company types, on the other hand, these are the ones that indicate their status in the sales process, like where they're at in our sales funnel, how we've been working with them. You'll notice that vendor is one of the options here. You may think that vendor doesn't totally make sense for a sale process, but we wouldn't want to list a vendor as a client, and we wouldn't want to list them as a prospect. They're not someone that we're going to be reaching out to and trying to sell to, or someone that we want to be sending our newsletter necessarily, but they are still a company that we work with and we want to have documented with and manage. So we list them as a vendor. Otherwise, we have our leads, those leads that we've decided aren't a good fit for the products we provide, so we move them to not a fit to make that very clear. We have prospects that are a little bit more qualified. We know that they would be a good fit for us, but we haven't quite won their service. And then, of course, client, which is more of that active client status. Now, what's interesting is that the company types and status can be used in combination because of course they're two separate fields. They don't necessarily rely on each other. However, someone like an active client would be in a client type. So an active company working with us could be in both the company type and status of active. Now, a company type of client could be delinquent, could be on credit hold, could be in the process of being off-boarded, or they're now a former client. So that's really, we use these two fields to determine what this company is to us, where they are in our sales process, how we treat them, and then also where they stand with us financially. Are they in good standing, bad standing, or they're just not quite approved yet? One of the neat things about company status is that with company types, we can add notifications to our service tickets, which are super handy, but with company status, we have a little bit more control. We can actually have pop-up notifications show up on service tickets. We can disallow saving or entering time on those tickets. And then this last option that I have highlighted is the fact that we can attach tracks. Now, Mitch just covered how valuable tracks are for us. We can create tracks for something like this, a collections process. So we can work on giving them the material they need and the information they need to true up on their bills. We can have a status change initiate something like a track. And a credit hold status with a collections track is a pretty popular example that we see. So now at this point, I'm going to take a quick pause and just check in on our questions to see what has come in so far. Okay, so we did have a question. Why can't the exam be immediately available? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. It is available all of next week. You have 5 full days to complete it. I know in the past, we are scheduling for the expert and professional, and back in the day when we had associate presented live as well, some of them would be Monday, Wednesday, some of them would be Tuesday, Thursday, maybe occasionally we'd have a Wednesday, Friday option. So we didn't know exactly when these exams would be ending, and we wanted to give you plenty of time, a full week to complete them. So Monday through Friday of the following week was chosen to give you time to review the material, maybe rewatch a couple sessions, reach out on the forums and ask questions. That's just how it's always been. If you would like to see that changed, you can always submit to education@connectwise.com, and we can have some of our management look over that and see if we could change those dates in the future. Okay, so does the professional certification go more in depth into the things covered in expert? So absolutely, we actually have a university page that covers our certifications. Now the certifications page on the university gives you a great high-level overview of really what the goals are for these certification programs and what's covered. Now we tend to think of associate as the basics that you need to get started and understand the application. Expert includes a little bit more information on the setup tables, where settings are coming from and how to change them. And then professional is a bit more of a deep dive. So you can really think of it as 101, 201, and 301 of the entire ConnectWise Managed product, if that helps. And right now we are in 201. Okay, so those are all the questions we have so far, so I'm just gonna carry right along. Now, contacts within Manage. Just because we talked about companies, we want to talk about contacts too. Now, just like you can have company types, you can have someone listed, maybe they're a vendor and a client, you can have both of those associated. Well, right over here, we have contact types, and we could list multiple here. Similar to company types, you can add in notifications that show up on tickets. I love the idea of using a contact type of prefers phone calls, prefers emails, in a different time zone, just to help your service technicians know how and when to reach out to your clients. It can be super helpful, especially if you're handling a VIP contact at a company that's not typically treated as a VIP. Another thing that's super cool about the contacts page is that when you're looking at an individual contact, not only can you create a ticket from here and have them and the appropriate company associated, but you can also see all of their currently open service. We love recommending the contacts page as a place to start when you're creating a ticket for someone if they happen to call in or be speaking with you at the time. That way you can ask them, or you already know their name and you can find the correct record, and it's easier to ask them the right questions here and spend less time creating that ticket. Okay, so moving on to marketing. So Nancy has started broadening their marketing efforts. They're spending a little bit more time, money, and attention getting the word out there and trying to bring in prospective customers. The only problem is that as they are seeing a little bit more traffic coming in, they really don't know exactly what caused that. They don't know which event she's been going to, what money they've been spending has actually been working. So in this way, we're going to try and track this a little bit better in Manage to help Nancy decide where to spend her time and dollars later on. And we can handle all of this through marketing campaigns. Now, marketing campaigns within Manage, as you might have guessed, are listed within the marketing module. Now from here, we can do something that's kind of interesting for Manage, whereas we can give an estimate and then see how well we did. What you're seeing right here is the ability to set a budget for the revenue and cost of this particular campaign. So maybe if we're attending a trade show, if we're providing a lunch and learn, how much are we expecting to spend? And how much revenue would we expect to get from that? What are our goals? Why are we doing this? And how much do we think it's going to cost us? When we list that out, we can see visually, which is nice, just the idea of the gross profit and the return on investment that we'll be getting from that particular effort. Now what we can do is at the end of this effort, when we decide that we've already thrown the event, sent the materials, attended the trade show, we can plug in here manually what it cost us. That's not something we document and manage. It could be paying for a booth space, it could be paying for food, something like that. But we can add that into the cost field manually. And then when we have linked opportunities that are won, that automatically populates into the actual revenue field, which we cannot alter. It's kind of holding us more accountable, making us a little bit more realistic. It will then calculate the gross profit and ROI from what actually occurred. And then we can really compare here. See, one, if we're being realistic, was this valuable? Did we think it was going to be valuable? Was it more valuable than we expected, etc., and get a lot of information from there. The next most important thing about campaigns is it's one thing to be able to see all this information from an individual campaign, but likely what we're going to want to do is be working on campaigns over time, completing different efforts, reaching out to different markets to really see what sticks, and then we want to be able to see at a high level what was successful and what wasn't. Now to do that, to report on this well, we like to use campaign subtype and campaign type and campaign subtype. That way we can break down our campaigns and we can report on all of them and see what sort of efforts are really bringing in the ROI. As a couple of examples, we could see types, like in this case we have a type of email and we have a type of trade show. Now we can get a little bit more granular and in the subtype field associate email with newsletters, managed service offerings that we send out to our clients. For trade shows, popular subtypes for those are actually going to be the market that we're working in. So if we're having a trade show, maybe it's more of a technology-focused trade show. Maybe it's managed services, kind of random. Maybe it's an accounting trade show or a security trade show. We can create efforts for each of those different markets that we're attending, or trade shows that we're attending in those different markets, and then compare them. See where we had the most traction, see where we had the most ROI. We can't do that though unless we have the campaigns set up with types and subtypes, and we're actually creating campaigns for all these efforts. Everything should be a campaign. And then the trick here for the ROI, Manage isn't going to automatically know that that opportunity you created on Tuesday had to do with the campaign that you created last week. You might have multiple going on at the same time. So what we do to make sure that Manage knows is there's a campaign field on every opportunity, this dropdown. From here, we select the campaign that it's associated with. So if we get a response to an email, a call from a client, someone asks us for a quote, we would want to make sure that this field had the appropriate campaign selected. When it does, as the opportunity is won and closed, it's actually going to show up in the actual revenue on our marketing campaign, adjusting that ROI for us. Okay, so still in sales, we just talked about marketing, we're moving into sales now. John's team uses opportunities, but they're struggling to keep them updated. He knows that they're working through these sales, but he has all of these missed close dates, and he's not really sure that they're doing everything they're doing to close a deal, which is difficult if we're not updating those records appropriately. But of course, it's difficult to tell someone if they feel like they're re-entering information. What we want to do is we want to make sure that they know exactly what's important and the easiest way to accomplish it. That way it's much more likely that they'll actually do their jobs the way we'd like. In this case, we always want to recommend using activities with opportunities. And there are a couple ways that we can really incentivize someone to do this. Now, activities with opportunities, the way that you can see that these are associated is on an opportunity. This field down here in the opportunity number pod, is going to list what the next step is for this opportunity. Now, when we're talking about opportunities, the opportunity is the record of the sale. Activities are the pieces of work that kind of drive the sale forward. So as we're calling them, as we're going on site to perform a demo, as we're reaching out to them via email, as we're building a quote, all of these are actions, time that we take to further this sale. Each one of those should be represented as an activity. Now within our setup tables, you can actually assign points to activities. So you can give them 10 points for going on site to complete a demo, 2 points for calling a customer. That kind of incentivizes them to create these different activities and document what they're doing to win this sale. What's great about this is that you now have greater visibility into what they're doing and what they've done to sign this deal. And you can kind of actually use your stronger sales members, if they get invested in this process, to build processes for how newer members can run through sales. Now, an activity is kind of like a service ticket light. It's going to have most of the fields that you need, like the date and time, what's happening, who are you calling, what's their phone number, etc. Notes fields too. But it's not going to have all the additional financial information and everything that you would need with a service ticket. So that's what makes it pretty handy and a little bit easier for a sales member to start using. Now, what's nice is kind of a pro tip, or a did you know in this case, is that you can actually create activity statuses that spawn new follow-up. What that means is that as your technician closes out the activity, it'll automatically close that activity and create a brand new one immediately with the notes copied. So they have a great place to start off to say, well, what's going to happen next? Next I should call them. Next I should email them in a week. And really what controls this is the setup tables within the activity status list. You'll notice here I have highlighted spawn follow-up. We only have 2 statuses that spawn follow-up, and both of them indicate this. They say closed plus next step, closed plus follow-up. If we were truly closing out this opportunity, we've won the deal, we would just select closed. It wouldn't try to spawn a new follow-up. It would just let us close out this activity and move on with our day. One of the reasons why we're particular about activities is that, one, it serves as documentation of what we've done, an idea of what we need to do, which means that we're creating a plan for what we need to do to win this sale, but it also allows us to keep our opportunities compliant. Because within Manage, if we're looking at a list of opportunities for a technician, we'll likely see all this red, especially if we're not using them properly yet. What's lovely about this is that if you hover over the red items, it'll tell you why it's not compliant so that you can fix it. You don't have to guess or go back into the documentation to figure it out. But really it's going to be if it's overdue, so the close date's in the past, if there are no open future activities, so we don't have anything coming up, or there's something in the past that's way overdue, hasn't been closed out, and if the opportunity is for $0. That's a pretty solid red flag that we are not doing what we need to do in this case. We probably shouldn't have an opportunity left if we have nothing to sell. Another important quality of an opportunity is going to be the stages. And stages indicate similar to a company type. It's where they're at in the sales process. Now, opportunity stages, we're usually thinking of the sales funnel when we think stages. And we'll have a ton of leads, ideally. We're getting a bunch of leads. Now, not all of those leads are going to be good fits for us. So next, we're going to move them into a qualified status when we've determined that they could use our products. We're going to lose a couple leads, I'm sure, but now we have a group of qualified opportunities or qualified companies. Now at this point, we're going to want to send out quotes. We use the quoted stage to indicate that we have sent them a quote. They can now review it. They're not simply qualified anymore. We've built this out and we have it presented to them. In this case, quoted is smaller than qualified just because we're representing the sales funnel, but you'll notice there's the same number of qualified as there are quoted. We should be sending out a quote for every qualified customer. And then we move into committed, which this represents just verbal commitment. Of all the quotes we send out, we're probably not going to have a one-for-one response, yes, I'm willing to purchase this, but we should be able to see our committed items come through. And then finally, we have the ones that have been won, which is signed on the dotted line. We are going to be providing the service for them. They're agreeing to pay. So as you can see here, we move these opportunities through the stage to really see what areas we're focused on. And if we keep our sales funnel up to date, we can actually use that lead line in the qualified line to give better estimates for how well we're setting ourselves up for the future. If we only had 2 items in the lead stage of the sales funnel, we would be in a pretty bad spot in a couple months or a couple weeks when those should be moving into 1, because we have a lot less records to work with, and those are likely going to get weeded down a little more. Now, one of our pro tips that we always recommend is in that quoted step, in that middle step, use something like a quoting tool. Now, we always recommend ConnectWise Sell. We're most familiar with it. It is one of our products. But that and similar products allow you to give your clients a better, I guess, a more clear picture of what they're signing up for. You can also give them options. You can provide them with the ability to select accessories. You have tons of options with something like a quoting tool to make their quotes a little bit more interactive. But do keep in mind, you can still print a quote from Manage. It's just not going to be interactive or as branded as something from a quoting tool. Okay, so now before we get into Jennifer's business case, I'm going to do another quick check for questions. Oh, okay, so this was actually about company and contact, so I'm glad I paused. How do you create the alert you showed on the first day that is on the ticket at the very top to specify a VIP client? It was highlighted in orange. Yes, so that is going to be a company type, and we named the company type in our setup tables VIP client, and it shows up on the service board. So let me see. I believe our company Chris Craft Boats is set up as a VIP. Okay. So this company actually may or may not be a VIP. I just opened the record, but this orange bar here, this is coming from the types setup table. Now, company information is coming from the company types setup table. There's an option in there called service alert. You could select this and create service alerts for the customer. One of them is VIP. Contact information runs off of the contact type. So I'll actually show you what this looks like as well. Ooh, that's a lot. So company type and contact type here. I'm just going to drill into company type for now, but they're both very similar. We have all the different types. Let's say we have VIP. Within VIP, I include my VIP client message, and I say enable service alert. That populates the orange banner on the ticket that will display for every company with this type selected. And remember that companies and contacts can have multiple types, so you can have multiple messages display in that dropdown. Cool, cool. Okay, so Jennifer's getting complaints that invoices don't match the quotes they were originally given. This is a never-ending issue with what they've quoted, what they provided, and then what they ended up billing for. Now, you might remember that we talked about this one item, this record within Manage, that could help us standardize this process. It's something that can be thrown onto an opportunity, transitioned into a sales order for purchasing, and then transitioned into a project for delivery. By this, we're referring to products that are created through the product catalog in the procurement module of Manage. Now, for a quick breakdown, there are a couple really important fields on products that I wanted to cover. The category and subcategory, these are really used to separate those products either for our accounting package purposes or for reporting or just general information. They give us an idea of what this product is. Is it hardware? Is it software? Is it a set of cables? Is it a workstation, etc.? Now, the product type and product class, similar to type and status in a lot of areas in Manage, can be commonly confused, but product type is for the accounting integration. So for the most part, don't worry about this field. The one that's going to affect us the most is going to be that product class. Product class determines how the product moves through Manage. Product type is just what the accounting package sees when we move it over. Now, the reason why these can be different is because we might be tracking a product as inventory in Manage, and we don't want to track it as inventory in QuickBooks. The fact that it's two separate fields allows us to do that. Now, our product classes, they can be inventory or non-inventory, which the main difference is that one is serialized and one is not. We track the inventory in our system, the non-inventory we do not. Now, they can both be purchased, so when they're added to a record, they generate purchasing demand automatically if you're using the procurement module. Our service class products, that class is used to represent labor. So if it's an installation where they're going to be spending an hour, that's what we would use. We'd use a service class product to represent that. And now bundles are a group of products. It can be a laptop bundle, which includes the mouse that we need, the correct bag, the charging cords, the docking station, etc. Or it could be something like a phase bundle, where it's actually intended to represent a project. It can have service class products that represent tickets and inventory and non-inventory class products that represent the physical hardware that we need to complete an installation. And then lastly, agreements. Those are truly, agreement class products are used to bill agreements. They end up as additions on an agreement record when they have been transitioned to that. And additions are essentially products that bill along with the billing cycle of an agreement. So monthly, yearly, etc. Now, price attributes are only important for those service class products. It tells Manage, okay, so you're telling me this is labor, how should I bill it? Is it a fixed fee of $400 no matter how much time's entered? Am I gonna just bill time and materials but give them an estimate of $300, etc.? Okay, so now moving on into services. Chris has a ton of different products and devices they serve. The problem is that they're selling these devices, not documenting what they are, and they need more information. They don't want to rely on just common knowledge of what each client has. What we're going to do to create records for these and document what's going on is configuration types. Now, configuration types are super helpful. Generally, we can create ones for sales and marketing, but most commonly these represent things like workstations and servers. Now, we can have things like the application name, what's being included. Something like a workstation might have the operating system, etc., passwords, addresses. But what's nice about this is that when we're creating types, whether it's for sales, marketing, service, it could even be to represent licenses or contracts that we renew, or not contracts that we renew, but licenses that we renew or certifications that we renew, is when we create these questions in the setup tables, we can decide how the information should be entered. Should this field expect an IP address and be set up that way? Is it going to be a password that would need to be hidden from certain members that don't have security access? And we can also determine what this entry field looks like. We love to recommend using a drop-down because then you can give a set amount of options that you would like to see, and then your technicians or whoever's creating this can just select them instead of having to type them in, which can cause human error and makes searching for them a lot more difficult than if we have super standardized answers. So yeah, standardize as much as possible to make it easier for you to find what you need. Now on a configuration, we can create tickets directly from here, which is super handy if it's a workstation or server. It's going to have all the information they need. We can remote into this machine from the ticket. We have the company, we have the contact, all of that good information already there. So now another topic that we covered in some detail, because it can be pretty confusing, are SLAs. Now, likely we've already configured our SLAs. We have a default setup because we know that's so important. We've made sure that our service board statuses align with what's considered a response, plan, and resolution. Well, now we need to make sure that we're delivering on what we promised. And for that snapshot of what's going on our help desk, we really need the services current report from our dashboard. Now remember, this is actually just another tab on our service board, so it's really easy to get to. It's a second tab, and it shows us what we're risking missing. And it's actually narrowed down by the specific board, we can say, and then we can look at the individual time periods and see how close we are to missing this goal. And then don't forget about dashboard service current. This is another really useful report. We can see how many tickets we're getting per day, what's being closed today, and we can also, in this area, really look at SLAs, see what's within an hour of missing their goal, and see what we've missed. Click in to get a list of all those tickets and review in a little more detail. Okay, so it looks like we're starting our wrap up on this session. So let me just look into some more questions. We might have more time for another business case or two, but we'll see. Okay, so is there a practice test? I do not believe that there is. A practice test would have actually been your placement test, because that covers a lot of questions that are often referenced in the different examinations. It's how we determine what level you're at. But really, for a practice test, that's part of what all of our pop quiz questions have been. So if you've been participating in our pop quizzes, doing relatively well, or you at least remember the ones that you did poorly on, you're pretty well set to take this test. Okay. Let me see. Is it best practice to create recurring monthly products like a license as a non-inventory class product or agreement class? So this depends. If it's something that you need to purchase, if you need demand for it on a monthly basis, then you can create this as non-inventory. But you can just create it as agreement class and list it on the additions tab of an agreement. You could have a configuration record created for that company tracking when the license expires, so I would actually recommend having a configuration to track the license expiration and then just use an agreement class product to bill for that license if it's not something that you need to see every month in your procurement module. Okay, and then we have a question about choosing the order of custom fields in pods. Now, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I can check this pretty quickly. So let's see. I'm going to look into our service ticket pod, because I know we have a couple set up there in this training environment. Okay, and you should be able to. If you can see here, I'll drag this over for you. When we list out our custom fields, we have this sequence field. Now, if I can edit this, we should be able to change the order. So sequence, instead of 1, I'm going to make this 3. It might not let me because now there's not a 1. But let's see. So I'm going to make this 3 so that VIP checkbox, I want it to move below the other custom field that I created. Let me see. Oh, okay. Yes, so I had 2 custom fields here. I had one for difficulty, which was an option they could set in VIP contact. By changing the sequence number, I can move VIP contact under the difficulty option up here. So thank you for that question. Okay, let's see if we have any more. Okay, now outside of changing the order, I don't think you can choose where else on the screen it places. It'll go into the white space at the bottom, and it will be in order of the sequence listed. Okay, so I don't see any more questions, so I think we have time for one more business case, and then we might wrap up on this review because it's getting close to 3:30. Okay, so Chris received a service ticket about an installation for a customer. Now this request, it's going to take more than 30 hours of work. It's going to require multiple resources and involves many steps. So should this be a service ticket or a project ticket? He needs to know whether his team's going to handle it or if he's pushing it off to Fred, the project manager. Now, a lot can go into this decision, and a lot of it probably depends on the teams in your organization and who is trained to handle what. But for the most part, we like to consider this as a project. It's over 30 hours, multiple teams, different types of work. Maybe there's milestones that need to be hit and billing that needs to be very specific. That's when we're going to say, let's use a project. Because project tickets are a little bit better for working on those long duration, proactive, tons of tasks, tons of resources type issues. And that's because a project ticket is, of course, a project is made up of multiple project tickets, which are more similar to service tickets. We can break them down into phases, so that maybe this is more of an administrative preparation phase, this is an actual installation phase, and then a final review, billing, checkup phase. It's really easy to sort them out that way. And there are tons of ways to create projects. We can create them manually. When we create them manually, we can apply those templates, which if you remember can give us a whole work plan for something we commonly complete, like an installation that our team does often, or maybe a scoping visit that has a bunch of different steps we have to remember. We can also copy existing projects. So if one went extremely well, you can copy that project and apply it to another customer to complete the same steps for them. And then typically we see this from the conversions wizard, where we're actually creating a project by converting a one opportunity. Remember, we can use those phase bundle products, which will actually create an entire phase. They'll take the service class products from that bundle class product and make individual tickets, and then they'll take all of the inventory and non-inventory and throw that into one tickets for this project ticket. So you can handle your billing through there. Okay. And then since we still don't have any questions, please, if you have any final questions, we have a couple minutes left to wrap up CMCE, so please throw those questions into the Q&A pod and we'll address them. But just before we leave, as we're looking at our company's profitability and trying to determine where our revenue is coming from, a really great way to track those services are through agreement types. Now, agreement types all have defaults, so it's essentially like setting up an agreement and then using it as a template to apply whenever you win a sale for managed service or email hosting, anything else that you offer. So yeah, definitely take advantage of those. They look just like agreements because you can set up most of the settings within agreements here and then just simply apply them as you as you have a new deal go through. Okay, and it looks like we made it. We made it through all of our finance material. Remember, the only one that we really didn't cover is we didn't review automation again, which was just covered by Mitch in our last session, and then we didn't get in too much into invoicing. But remember the different fields that we covered when we talked about billing status and how that can move invoices out of the invoice batch emailing screen, how that delivery method for companies should always be set to email so it even shows up in invoice batch emailing to begin with. definitely run through invoice batch emailing and make sure that you understand the different fields within the invoicing module. Be able to find them through invoice search, but really, like I said, the best way to get through this exam would be to have the Worth database open, click into the screens that are being referenced in the questions, and if you need to, click that help button, the question mark with the circle around it. It'll take you directly to the documentation and define all the fields for you. So it's really easy to go through and just double check, make sure you're understanding those different fields properly. Okay, well that's all she wrote. Thank you all so much for joining us, and good luck on your exam. Please feel free to post any questions on the discussion forum or email education@connectwise.com, and we would be happy to help you out. But best of luck, and we'll see you next time.